You ever been told your car's too ugly to park? Not too broken, not too loud, just doesn't match the aesthetic. Because I have. It happened last Saturday on a sunburned parking lot in Hawthorne Valley. My grandson and I had just rolled in, me behind the wheel of my '72 Dodge Dart, him in the passenger seat with an oversized soda and stars in his eyes. We came for the Community Race Expo, supposed to be open to the public, free track access for families, demo runs, kids' STEM tents, the whole nine. I figured I'd give the boy a taste of where I came from. Instead, we got a taste of where we apparently didn't belong. I'd barely shut off the ignition before some guy in a neon orange vest walked up with that country club smile. Half teeth, half judgment. "Sir," he said, tapping my window with his knuckle, "this vehicle isn't permitted past the entry line." I blinked. What? Why? He leaned closer. "This is a curated event," he said, like I'd asked to take a dump in the punch bowl. "We're asking non-display vehicles to park down the hill." I looked around. Ferraris, Lambos, Teslas stacked like Tinder dates in the paddock. No oil stains, no rust. Hell, probably no soul. Down the hill meant half a mile of gravel, no shade, and no line of sight to the track. Basically, exile. My grandson looked at me and whispered, "Are they saying our car's too old?" I didn't answer right away. I was too busy trying to decide if I was pissed, embarrassed, or both. I got out, popped the hood, and flipped up the prop rod so they could see the engine. Because if there's one thing you don't do, it's call my Dart a joke in front of my family. The guy flinched. "Sir, please don't, touch the cars without clearance." "It's my car," I said. And right then, Blaine Hawthorne himself rolled up. Of course, he had to make an entrance, linen blazer, reflective shades, and some startup CEO grin like he was late to pitch Shark Tank. He looked at me, then at my car, then at my grandson. "Oh," he said. "Just that. Oh, like we were the roach in his soup. You're not displaying, right?" he added, "because we have a certain image we're trying to maintain." That was the moment my grandson's hand slipped out of mine. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about the car. This was about what I looked like, what he looked like, about the sweat under my collar, the rust on my fender, and the fact that I didn't come with a lanyard or a live stream. We left without another word. Didn't even get out of the lot. But as we drove away, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror, and I didn't see some washed-up gearhead. I saw a man who used to move 3,400 pounds of steel through hairpin turns at 180 miles an hour with nothing but instinct and guts. I saw Curtis Reynolds, former NASCAR driver, 16 professional finishes, 2 podiums, 1 crash that nearly killed me and did kill my career, and I saw a kid in the passenger seat who just watched his hero get dismissed like a dented hubcap. We got home and parked under the carport. My grandson didn't say much, neither did I. I just stared at that Dart for a long time. The paint's chipped, the left tail light flickers sometimes. The hood takes a rubber mallet and a prayer to close, but I rebuilt it with my hands. Every bolt, every hose, every inch of that engine bay has blood or coffee or both in it. That car was my comeback. After the crash, after I quit the circuit, after the divorce, after I lost the house. I'd found her in a junkyard in Tuscaloosa, half buried under kudzu and sunburnt metal. Took me 5 years of graveyard shifts and scraped knuckles to bring her back. And now some corporate show pony wants to tell me she isn't presentable? Buddy, I may be old, but I ain't finished. 3 days later, I got a letter. Not an email, not a phone call. An honest-to-God envelope, hand-delivered and shoved crooked in the screen door like a passive-aggressive wedding invite. The return address? Hawthorne Velocity Club, Member Services Division. Which was funny because I wasn't a member, not even close. I figured maybe they were following up to apologize for the stunt in the parking lot, maybe offer me a day pass and a free hot dog for the humiliation. Yeah, that optimism lasted exactly 1 sentence. Dear Mr. Reynolds, it has come to our attention that your vehicle, a Dodge Dart, was present at the community exhibition event hosted at our facility this past weekend. While the event was open to the public, all guests were expected to comply with our vehicle standards as outlined in the event brochure and display protocols. Vehicle standards? They're lucky I didn't stuff the brochure into their espresso machine, but it got better. Due to non-compliance and the disruption caused by your display, your presence was deemed incompatible with the visual and branding expectations of our institution. As such, we regret to inform you that your attendance at any future public events will require prior approval. Prior approval, for me to exist near their track again. Then came the cherry on top. We also ask that you refrain from attempting to exhibit, park, or participate in any event using said vehicle unless it meets our standards of presentation and mechanical certification. The Dart does not qualify under current guidelines." They named her. The Dart, like she was some stray dog I dragged in. I read the whole thing 3 times, then folded it up real neat and stuck it in the glove box, right next to the registration papers I've kept since 1981. The next day, they took it a step further. I was pulling out of the gas station near Route 19, my usual stop after a shift, when I noticed something taped to my windshield. Another letter? Nope. A bright orange sticker slapped across the driver's side like a boot to the face. It read, "Unsafe vehicle, not for display." Issued by Hawthorne Velocity Operations Compliance Team. They'd marked my car, marked it, like some middle school hall monitor with a Sharpie and a power complex. And just like that, the whispers started. "Oh, that's the guy with the old beater they kicked out of the showcase. He used to race, right? Back when races were black and white. He's still driving that thing? Doesn't he know it's a safety hazard?" I became that guy overnight. The relic, the wannabe, the joke. I even caught one of my neighbors, guy named Rob, 2 doors down, drives a leased BMW he washes twice a day, snapping a picture of the Dart from behind his hedge. When I asked what he was doing, he said, "Just making sure we keep the neighborhood tidy." That's when it clicked. This wasn't just about the car, it wasn't about my paint job or chrome trim or lack of a touchscreen. This was a shot across the hood. Blaine Hawthorne was sending a message. "You're not welcome here, not on the track, not in the parking lot, not even in the damn neighborhood if he had his way." All because I reminded people of something he couldn't control. History. Real, grease under the fingernails, red-blooded American racing history. The kind that doesn't come with a YouTube channel or a sponsored espresso machine. And the thing about guys like Blaine, they don't hate you because you're bad. They hate you because you were good before they ever arrived. I didn't rip the sticker off. Not yet. I left it there like a badge, a warning, a dare. Because I knew one thing Blaine didn't. The last time someone told me I didn't belong, I made them eat my taillights halfway through turn 4. And, buddy, I still remember the line. The first attack was just a scratch. The next one left a dent. It started the following week when I came home from a shift and found a certified letter taped to my door. Not slipped under the mat, not in the mailbox, taped, right at eye level like a scarlet letter for mechanics. The envelope was sealed with the gold Hawthorne Velocity Club crest like it was some royal decree. Inside, folded twice with surgical precision, was a formal notice. "Your vehicle has been flagged as non-compliant under the Vehicle Ordinance Initiative supported by the Hawthorne Valley Community Partnership Program." Catchy title for a hit list. Apparently, they'd partnered with a local beautification nonprofit to elevate the standard of mechanical visibility within Hawthorne neighborhoods. I read that twice out loud just to confirm it made 0 sense. Translation, they wanted old cars out of driveways, out of sight, out of mind, out of their storybook version of suburbia. That weekend, I got 2 more notes. One tucked under my windshield wiper, the other slid under my garage door. Both from different concerned neighbors. Both anonymous, both typed. "Your vehicle is an eyesore. Consider our property values." One even included a link to a GoFundMe titled, "Let's Upgrade Kurt." I didn't know whether to laugh or throw a wrench through my neighbor Rob's ring cam. Then came the real hit. It was a Sunday morning, I'd just made my coffee, black, no sugar, no hope, and stepped out to check on the Dart. I do it every morning. Habit from back in the day. You learn to listen to a car like it's breathing. Only this time, she didn't breathe back. I opened the hood and immediately smelled it. Burnt plastic and acid. The kind of stench that means something bad's already happened and the damage is done. The wiring harness was fried, not frayed, melted. Somebody had slipped in during the night and sabotaged her. The copper was scorched. The casing bubbled like microwave meat. Whoever did it knew exactly what to hit, just enough to kill the ignition, but not enough to make it look like a break-in. No windows broken, no forced entry, just surgical sabotage. Insurance called it vandalism. I called it war. The next day, my grandson asked why the Dart wasn't working. I told him she was just tired and needed a tune-up. I lied, because how do you explain to a kid that some adults throw temper tantrums when you don't match their Instagram feed? But he knew. Kids always know. He looked down at the driveway, then back at me. Was it them? I didn't answer, not because I didn't know, but because saying it out loud would make it real. Later that night, I stood in the garage with a socket wrench in one hand and a flashlight in the other, just staring at the damage. There were fingerprints on the fender, greasy, clumsy ones. Wrong size for me. I didn't call the cops. Didn't see the point. Guys like Blaine don't leave their fingerprints. They leave messages. And this one was clear. Stay in your lane, old man. They weren't just trying to push me out of the club. They were trying to push me out of the community. And it was working. The neighbors stopped waving. Some crossed the street instead of walking past my driveway. One morning, I saw someone filming my house from across the cul-de-sac. When I stepped outside, they ducked into their Tesla and drove off. Even Rob, who used to borrow my tools, started leaving his sprinklers on when he saw me coming. Passive aggression has a smell. It's chlorinated. My grandson came over less often, not because he didn't want to, but because his mom started calling with that tone, concerned, polite, coated in sugar and judgment. Dad, maybe it's time to sell the Dart. You could get a new car, something safer. Safer, like a beige SUV, like giving up. I told her I'd think about it. I didn't. Instead, I stood in that garage and stared at the Dart for what felt like hours, and I thought about the last race I ran before the crash. It was Richmond, 1994. I was driving car 82, sponsored by a hardware store that's now a vape shop. My team had blown the setup, the alignment was off, and we were on slicks in a light drizzle. Should have pulled into the pit. Should have played it safe. I didn't. Because when you feel the wheel talking to you through your fingers and the track starts to hum just right, you don't back off. You lean in. That's what I did then, and that's what I was about to do now. Because Blaine Hawthorne had just made the one mistake you don't make with a guy like me. He thought this was about a car. I've never been much for paperwork. The track taught me everything I needed to know about bureaucracy. It's always slower than the car and twice as dangerous when it crashes. But after the sabotage, the harassment, and the absolute silence from anyone with a shred of decency in the neighborhood, I figured I'd give the slow lane a shot. So I filed a complaint. Started with the Hawthorne Valley Neighborhood Advisory Council, which sounds official but is basically 3 retirees and one guy named Chad, who lists strategy as a hobby. Their next public meeting was in the back room of the community center, sandwiched between yoga for seniors and some workshop about how to compost with your feelings. I showed up early, wore my cleanest flannel, brought photos of the Dart, receipts for my restoration work, and a copy of the community charter I dug up online, highlighted with the line about how the neighborhood values history, character, and intergenerational inclusion. I even brought cookies. Store-bought, sure, but still, that's diplomacy in suburban terms. The room was half full when I arrived. Most of them were sipping from paper cups, talking about property lines and whose dog kept pooping on whose lawn. I waited my turn, took notes, listened politely, then I stood up, cleared my throat, and laid it all out. Told them about the sticker, the letters, the whispers, showed them the burned wiring harness. Told them about how my grandson won't come over as much now, how kids in the neighborhood point at the Dart like it's a haunted house on wheels. And then I said something I hadn't planned. I raced professionally for over a decade, never cheated, never cracked under pressure. I've driven at night in the rain without headlights and passed guys with twice the horsepower because I knew my line. But none of that compares to the feeling of standing in your own driveway and realizing you're being erased. That got their attention for a second. Then Blaine Hawthorne walked in. Late, of course, ouch, sheep, wearing a mock turtleneck and those indoor sunglasses that scream, "I've never rotated my own tires." He didn't acknowledge me, just walked to the front, gave a 2-minute speech about community standards, long-term valuation strategy, and the need to remain competitive with comparable neighborhoods. Then he turned, looked me dead in the eye, and added, "This isn't about Curtis. We admire our elders, but our community is evolving, and we can't allow sentimental relics to stall our momentum." Relics, like I was a rusted street lamp or a VHS tape. The council nodded along like they'd just heard a TED Talk. One of them clapped. The chairperson, a woman named Carol who smelled like lavender and passive aggression, thanked Blaine for framing the issue constructively, then turned to me and said, "We'll take your concerns under advisement." That was it. I left the cookies behind, let the vultures have them. Next, I tried city code enforcement. I figured if the wiring damage couldn't be tied to Hawthorne directly, maybe I could at least push back on the bogus vehicle standards they were suddenly inventing. Brought in an old friend, Mac, used to be a city inspector before the budget cuts pushed him into HVAC repair. Mac and I go way back. He's the only guy who ever outcursed me during a carburetor rebuild. He took one look at the Dart and said, "They're full of it. This thing's cleaner than my wife's minivan." Then he dug through some records, called in a favor, and got me a meeting with the local zoning board. We sat down, made our case. The board rep, a guy named Dennis with a Bluetooth headset and a nervous laugh, nodded like a bobblehead and told me they'd look into it. 3 days later, Mac called me. "They're stonewalling," he said. City Legal says the track's on semi-private zoning and the Vehicle Ordinance Initiative is technically a private civic partnership, which means, I finished, they can do whatever the hell they want if nobody stops them. Pretty much. I even tried reaching out to the club itself. Sent a letter to their admin office, respectful, calm, no threats. Just asked for a chance to speak directly with whoever was behind these policies, maybe give them a tour of the Dart, show them it wasn't some leaking heap of rust, maybe even offer to volunteer at an event. 2 weeks passed, no reply, but I did get another letter. This time from the club's legal representative, real formal, real sharp. Mr. Reynolds, a further unsolicited contact with club members, guests, or staff will be treated as harassment. Any continued violation of our established community standards may result in formal legal action. I framed that one, hung it in the garage right above the tire rack, because that was the moment I realized something Blaine didn't. He thought he'd backed me into a corner. But corners are where real drivers do their best work. It was a Tuesday, the kind of gray, damp day where even the birds seem like they're over it. I was in the garage under the Dart trying to reroute what was left of the wiring harness when my phone buzzed on the workbench. Once, then again, then 5 times in quick succession. That's how I knew it wasn't my daughter. She still calls like it's 1998. No, this was Eli. Eli Santiago. He was a junior mechanic on my first NASCAR team. Back then, he was just a wiry kid who could drop a transmission blindfolded and drink 3 Red Bulls without blinking. Now, he was the lead tech director for one of the regional racing leagues and, according to Instagram, had discovered salad. I hadn't heard from him in at least 5 years, but he'd seen the videos. Turns out, someone had posted a clip of that HOA council meeting, me speaking, Blaine smirking, the cookie tray being looted in the background. I hadn't noticed a camera, but somebody had clearly been filming. Eli's first text said, "Dude, tell me that was really you. Please tell me you're about to wreck somebody's PR stunt with a V8. The second one was better. "You got time for a call? 'Cause I just found something you're gonna want to see." Now, when a guy who used to build engines with coat hangers and curse in 3 languages tells you he found something, you listen. So I called him. He answered on the first ring. "Kurt, I've been down a rabbit hole for the last 3 hours. You are not gonna believe this. Try me." "Blaine Hawthorne, you know the guy built that track on top of the old Franklin Speedway?" I froze. "Wait, that's where Hawthorne Velocity Club sits now." "Exactly. He bought it in 2015, bulldozed half the original infrastructure, paved over Turn 2, and called it VIP Access Lane. But here's the kicker, man. That land, that speedway, it's on the Historical Motorsport Preservation list." I sat down, slowly. "Since when?" "Since 2003, I cross-checked state archives. Franklin Speedway was one of the last 3 dirt-to-asphalt conversion ovals in the state. They were supposed to maintain at least 30% of the original structure." I blinked. "But there's nothing left." "Exactly. He was never supposed to tear down the garage bay walls, the original pit lane, or the south bleachers. That's 3 separate violations, minimum, and get this." He paused, like he was savoring the moment. "Your name, Kurt. Your damn name is in the registry." My heart kicked. "What?" "You raced your last sanctioned short track run there in '94, right?" "Yeah, Richmond was my last pro run, but my final race was at Franklin, regional charity circuit, packed house, won by 3 seconds. Eli was already pulling it up. I could hear him typing. "Yep, you're listed on the event roster, Franklin Speedway 1994 Farewell Classic. That makes you a legacy driver tied to the preservation clause. You're part of the historical record." I stared at the walls of my garage, which suddenly felt a hell of a lot more sacred. "You're telling me I have legal standing?" "I'm telling you Blaine built a champagne bar on what was supposed to be protected asphalt. You've got enough standing to bury him in red tape and righteous fury." He wasn't done. Also found an old interview. Blaine, 2006, local news. He's bragging about how his first taste of racing came from sneaking into Franklin Speedway as a teenager. "Wait, he snuck in?" "Yeah, used to ride his bike there, watch races through a hole in the fence." I couldn't help but smile. So he built his empire by trespassing on the same track he later destroyed. Eli laughed. "Oh, the irony's thick enough to lubricate a gearbox." Later that night, I dug through my old keepsake bin, bottom shelf, under the tarp, past the crate of carburetor cleaner and forgotten Christmas lights. And there it was. A faded flyer from that last race at Franklin Speedway. 1994 Farewell Classic, featuring Curtis Reynolds and the number 82 Havoc Dart. Right there, in 12-point font, was my name. I remembered that night like it was yesterday. The crowd, the roar, the feeling of the track under me, alive and humming like it had a soul. That track was sacred ground, and Blaine paved over it like it was a parking lot for influencers. I looked at the flyer, then I looked at the dart. She was more than a car now, she was evidence. Blaine hadn't just insulted me, he'd erased a piece of American racing history, and lucky for me, I still had the keys. I didn't sleep that night, not out of stress. I've slept through thunder, pit stops, and one particularly aggressive kidney stone, but this time, my brain was busy. Eli had given me more than a lead. He handed me a loaded tool chest and said, "Here, buddy, go fix history." I laid everything out on the workbench, literally and figuratively. The flyer from Franklin Speedway, the article about the historic site status, the clause about legacy drivers, the 2006 interview with baby-faced Blaine bragging about trespassing on the same grounds he'd later destroy for his champagne suite, and most important of all, the State Preservation Code. No registered private entity shall materially alter a historically protected motorsport facility without review and approval from the Historical Motorsport Authority. Guess what Blaine didn't do? I called Eli again. We started mapping it out like a race strategy. He was crew chief now. I was behind the wheel. Step 1, get eyes on this. The HOA ignored me. The zoning board shrugged, so we'd go around them. Luckily, I still had one contact left in media who hadn't retired, gone corporate, or gotten disillusioned and started a barbecue YouTube channel. His name was Deshaun Tate, used to be a pit reporter for local cable back in the day, now ran a small but loyal podcast for old school gearheads called Track Talk with Tate. He owed me a favor. More importantly, he loved a good underdog story, and nothing sells better than an old racer taking on a rich fraud in a pressed blazer. I called him up, didn't even get past the second sentence before he cut in. "Wait, you mean that Kurt Reynolds? Franklin 1994, rainy finish, 3 wide on turn 4? You're that Kurt?" "Guilty." He whistled low. "Man, if you're going after Blaine Hawthorne, you better have fuel in the tank." "I've got more than that. I've got the track map, the wreckage, and a reason." "Then let's light it up." We scheduled a feature. He wanted a video walkthrough, me, the dart, and the flyer, in the exact spot where Franklin Speedway used to sit. Only problem? It was now the guest parking lot for Velocity West, Hawthorne's new development, a strip of polished asphalt and faux European benches with QR codes that take you to a champagne menu. I didn't ask permission. That land was still protected, even paved, even bulldozed. It was sacred. By law and history. So that Saturday, Deshaun and his cameraman met me at sunrise. I pulled the dart up to the exact line where turn 2 used to curve. It was surreal, like standing on a battlefield where someone had built a smoothie bar. We filmed. I showed the flyer, pointed to the coordinates, talked about the race, how Blaine used to sneak in through the back fence, how he later bought it, renamed it, and paved over one of the last remaining NASCAR short tracks in the state, illegally. I didn't get loud. I didn't need to. I let the facts drive. After that, Eli helped me submit an official complaint to the State Historical Preservation Authority. We filed it under Code 12A, clause for destruction without permit, and attached video evidence of demolition, satellite images pre- and post-construction, news archives of the track's historical status, a list of remaining legacy drivers who'd raced there, including yours truly. Then we filed a second complaint to the Motorsport Regulatory Oversight Board, citing Blaine for misrepresentation of facility heritage, a move that, if upheld, would cost him his club's sanctioning status and most of his corporate sponsors. But I wasn't done yet, because I remembered something Blaine said in that HOA meeting. "We admire our elders, but our community is evolving." He'd said it like I was roadkill in his rearview mirror, like progress only had room for one generation. So I reached out to a few local racing academies, asked if they had any teens who'd be interested in mentoring or track history. One responded with a resounding hell yes, a charter school running an auto tech program that had been trying for years to get a foot in the door at Hawthorne Velocity Club and always got shut out. I invited 5 of them to the next council meeting, told them to bring their builds, their parts, their stories, told them to be loud, to be proud, to show that progress doesn't mean erasing the past, that it means building on it with socket wrenches and elbow grease. That night, I stood in the garage with the dart idling smooth again, the hiss of the engine like a low growl, waiting for green. I looked at that old orange sticker still on the windshield, the one that said, "Unsafe vehicle, not for display." I peeled it off, folded it once, tucked it into my pocket, because they were right about one thing. I wasn't here to be displayed. I was here to drive. I showed up to the next HOA meeting with a clipboard and a pit crew. Deshaun was there with his cameraman, mic'd up and already recording. Eli had printed copies of every legal document we'd dug up, preservation codes, the 1994 race flyer, satellite overlays, highlighted, tabbed, and bound like a final thesis on corporate hypocrisy. And behind us? 5 high school kids from that charter auto tech program, each one pushing their own builds. DIY go-karts, modded drift carts, even one electric Frankenbeetle with a battery salvaged from a golf cart and the soul of a street racer. And they were proud. Not polished, not quiet, but proud. We all stood in the back, waiting. I didn't speak at first. I let the kids take the floor. The room, which normally echoed with complaints about trash bins and mailbox colors, went dead silent as these teenagers talked about trying to join the Hawthorne Velocity Club's outreach program and getting ignored. One of them, a girl named Tanya with grease under her nails and a welding mask clipped to her backpack, said, "We don't have money, we have torque wrenches and curiosity, and we still got shut out because we weren't the right look for their brand." I swear I saw Carol from the council chew her lip for the first time all year. Then Deshaun played the video, the one of me standing on the paved-over bones of Franklin Speedway. The camera panned across the champagne bar, the asphalt VIP lane, the bench bolted over turn 2. Then it cut to me holding the 1994 flyer, talking about that final race, how I'd lapped 2 rookies and crossed the line to a standing ovation. Then it cut again, to Blaine's 2006 interview, the one where he grinned and said, "I used to sneak into Franklin Speedway every Saturday. I fell in love with racing watching Curtis Reynolds in that old number 82 Dart." The room was silent. Until I stepped forward. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "I didn't come here to be liked," I said. "I came here because I have a legal right to speak, because this club was built on land that should have been preserved, and because the man running it lied to this community while he paved over history and locked the next generation out in the process." Then I placed the framed orange sticker, the one that said, "Unsafe vehicle, not for display," on the council table. "Turns out," I said, "this car was never the problem." 2 days later, Deshaun released the full story on his podcast and YouTube channel. He titled it, "Legacy Under Fire: How One Club Buried Racing History to Sell Champagne." It blew up. Local news picked it up within hours. By the end of the week, Motorsport Heritage Watchdog had tweeted an official statement demanding a review of the site's development permits. Even the State Historical Preservation Authority dropped a cease and desist on any further structural changes to the property until a full investigation was complete. That shut down Blaine's planned Sky Lounge expansion. Cold. Sponsors started pulling out. One of them, an electric truck brand trying to court green racing fans, issued a public statement that said, "We do not support the erasure of grassroots motorsport history." Eli sent me that one with a screenshot and a single line. "You're in the fast lane now." But I wasn't done. See, Blaine had been prepping for his annual Velocity Invitational, the high-profile media event where he strutted around in branded polos while influencers did donuts for TikTok likes. I applied again. Not through the official portal, through the legacy clause buried in the original bylaws of Franklin Speedway. The one that granted automatic qualifying status to any driver who competed at Franklin between 1980 and 1995. I still had the flyer, still had the time slip, still had the dart. They had no legal grounds to block me. I was in. Race day came fast. I rolled up to the Velocity Club lot at 7:02 a.m. sharp, engine rumbling low, tires clean, exhaust rebuilt by my own hand 2 nights before. The security guard raised an eyebrow when he saw the dart. Then he looked down at the entry list. There it was. Curtis Reynolds, legacy entry, number 82 Dart. He waved me through. No blazer, no sponsor patch, just me, my car, and a grin that had been waiting 20 years to stretch its legs. Inside, the other drivers were already milling around, mostly influencers with custom wraps and media crews, polished cars, spray-on confidence. Blaine stood in the center of it all like a bad cologne ad, schmoozing with local news cameras. Then he saw me, and to his credit, he didn't flinch. Just gave a tight smile and said, loud enough for the cameras, well, looks like the past came to visit." I stepped right up to him, looked him square in the eye, and said, "No, Blaine, the past came to remind you who paved the damn road you're standing on." The day of the Velocity Invitational felt less like a race and more like a red carpet gala for people who think traction control is a personality trait. There were banners, drone cameras, sparkling water stations, DJ Booth blasting remixed engine revs like that's what racing fans want to hear. Every inch of the track had been sterilized and branded. But me? I brought noise. I didn't do warm-ups or poses. I wasn't there to sell merch or spray tan a sponsorship logo on my rear quarter panel. I pulled the dart up to the grid and waited. Just me and the machine that outlived half the people who used to cheer for it. The other drivers barely looked at me until the announcer said my name. Next up, a surprise legacy entry, Curtis Reynolds in the 1972 Dart, car number 82, returning to race on the very asphalt he once ruled. There was a ripple in the crowd, confusion, curiosity, then scattered cheers from the older folks who still remembered Franklin Speedway. And then the big screen lit up. Footage from Track Talk with Tate. Deshaun had timed it perfectly. One half of the screen, Blaine's polished welcome video from last year, where he waxed poetic about building a community-driven racing ecosystem. Other half, my video from the parking lot standing over the remains of Turn 2 with a flyer in one hand and a truth bomb in the other. This wasn't built to elevate racing, it was built to erase it. Then came the side-by-side overlays, what the track looked like in '94 versus now. Franklin's original pit lane, the bleachers, the hairpin curve that made legends, or sent them into the wall. Now, covered by a wellness walkway and a wine kiosk, you could feel the tension shift. The audience started murmuring. A couple reporters at the media tent were flipping through printed copies of the preservation code, courtesy of Eli. One cameraman spun to catch Blaine's face. That's when the second video dropped. Blaine, 2006, smirking. I used to sneak into Franklin Speedway just to watch Kurt Reynolds race. That man could bend a car like physics owed him money. Cut to today. Me, on the track Blaine paved over. In the car Blaine banned. Back on the same soil I once called home. I didn't win the race. Didn't need to. I held my line, didn't spin out, and clocked the second fastest lap of the day on a machine built before seatbelts were cool. The crowd was on their feet every time I passed the main straight. I wasn't racing for points. I was racing for proof. Proof that the soul of racing didn't live in LED dashboards and carbon fiber body kits. It lived in grease, noise, and stubbornness. And I'd brought all three. By the time I rolled back into the paddock, Blaine was gone. Word spread quick, sponsors bailed. The Historical Review Board issued an emergency injunction on all future developments at the club. The State Historical Preservation Authority launched a formal investigation. HOA board members, those same ones who laughed at my first complaint, started doing interviews in which they claimed they never really supported Blaine's direction. Carol from the council stepped down, for health reasons. Rob, my neighbor with the sprinkler vendetta, quietly asked if I still had that Torxie wrench he borrowed in 2012. I told him I'd think about it. But the best part? Came the next week when a group of kids from the Autotech program got invited to actually race on the track. Not film it, not tour it, race. Deshaun live-streamed the whole thing. The headline said it all. The track tried to erase its past, so the past showed up and burned rubber. And right there, in the stands, sitting next to my grandson, was a plaque, freshly installed at Turn 2. This corner is dedicated to the drivers who made Franklin Speedway legendary. Curtis Reynolds. Legacy lives here. I didn't cry, but I might have revved the Dart just loud enough to cover up the lump in my throat. Every Sunday morning now, I take the Dart out for a loop through the neighborhood. Just once. Just slow enough that I can hear the tires hum over the pavement and smell the mix of warm asphalt and fresh-cut grass. It's not a race anymore. It's a lap of gratitude. I still get a few looks. Some folks wave, some pretend they didn't spend 6 months trying to get me banned from breathing near a cul-de-sac. That's fine. I'm not here for apologies. I've got something better. A few weeks after the race, the Autotech kids invited me to their garage night. Said they'd been working on a surprise. When they pulled back the tarp, I damn near choked on my own heart. They'd recreated my number 82, Dart in 3D, engine and all, in a driving sim rig made out of scrap parts, a busted TV mount, and more ingenuity than I'd seen since my pit crew rebuilt a rear axle with zip ties and prayer in '88. Even got the sound right. That low, throaty growl she makes when she's in second and thinking about third. They asked me to try it. I did one lap, beat all 5 of their top scores, didn't say a word, just handed the controller back and walked away whistling. The HOA hasn't sent another letter. I think the new board president, some retired librarian named Dottie, has bigger concerns, like organizing a classic car meet in the recreation center parking lot. She asked if I'd help co-host it. I told her sure, so long as nobody tries to put a sticker on my windshield. She laughed. Only if it says, "Legend lives here." Smart lady. And Blaine? Last I heard, he was trying to get approval to build a wellness motorsport retreat in Arizona. Apparently, it's hard to sell speed when Google results for your name pull up words like fraud, demolition violation, and got smoked by a grandpa in a Dodge. Tough break, but hey, I'm sure there's a TED Talk in there somewhere. Title it, How to Monetize Heritage, Then Get Run Over by It. As for me, I'm back to nights in the garage. The Dart's got a new set of tires, and Charlie, my grandson, is learning to gap spark plugs. He calls it magic. I don't correct him. Man, it's that. Sometimes when the weather's right and the house is quiet, I take a lawn chair out to the edge of the driveway and just sit there under the porch light, watching the shadows stretch out across the hood. And I think about how far we've come. How legacy isn't something you hang on a wall or bury under branding. It's something you drive, one lap at a time.